All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Robin Clare, who is a best-selling spiritual author, podcaster, fellow podcaster, might I say, and recovery coach professional. Robin, how you doing?
Good, Timothy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. And we'd like to jump right in. So if you could start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Yeah. hmm Let's see. So I am here in the USA. A I'm all the things. I'm a mom, a wife, a daughter, and it's fun because I have grown children and elder parents, and so I think they call that like a sandwich generation. And so lots of responsibilities there, but I also have a wonderful business that I will probably talk a little bit more about later. But what do I like to do for fun? I like to cook. I really enjoy looking at recipes. I kind of analyze them at first, and then I'm really good at seeing. It's like chemistry, I think, recipe chemistry. I'm good at seeing them. I'm good at turning them into something healthier than what they might originally be. So I can get caught up in like reels on FaceTime or Instagram when recipes come up and I'm like, what are they making? That looks wonderful. That looks disgusting, right? Like I'm busy like staring at them. So that's what I do for fun. I love to walk on the beach when the weather is nice. I guess that's conflicting with our bomb cyclone of snow that's supposed to come this weekend. And yeah, that's mostly what I do for fun. I like to watch shows like on Netflix and things like that too. I'm kind of get into all kinds of good stuff.
There we go. There we go. I love it. Tell us what your favorite recipe is.
My favorite recipe. That's a good one. Um, Well, I used to love anything chocolate, but then I became allergic to chocolate. So this year I've been experimenting with things that are not chocolate. I didn't even know there was a world of baking and cooking that where chocolate didn't exist. So I've been finding that world, but I would say that my favorite thing to cook are curries, any kind of curry, yellow, green, whatever. Love to experiment with that. I love to be able to throw everything into one pan and just like go to town and see. And today I picked up in Whole Foods, I picked up the spice called Candy Spice, Kandy, and it was a blend of spices from Sri Lanka. And so I made a chicken and cauliflower and potato dish, and it smelled really weird. I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be good. And my husband was funny because he had some and he's like, I don't think I like this. And then he went back for more. And I'm like, why'd you go back for more? And he goes, I don't know. I kept going back and forth. Do I like this? Do I not like this? And then he wound up liking it. And I said, I bet you it'll be better tomorrow. You know how
Yeah,
leftovers, like when everything gets a chance to settle. So yeah, so I love using different flavor profiles.
absolutely. There we go. Feel free to send me some curry.
Okay.
Well, let's hear a bit more about your business.
Yes. So I had the traditional corporate background, but I always had this very deep spiritual side to me. And I always felt like I could never be my authentic self in corporate America because you didn't talk about spirituality then. So I retired from corporate and I started my own spiritual event production company, like a spiritual promoter. And I did events for other healers and other teachers. And then I started getting the sense that I was the teacher. And I didn't really know if I wanted to do that because I like doing the events. I like watching from the side of the stage versus being on the stage. But then I started writing books, and I've written 5 books, all spiritually based. And and then I started speaking and teaching, and now I love doing all of that.
There we go. There we go. I love that. And we're going
Mm,
to get into that kind of transition a bit
yeah.
more. But before we do, tell us a little bit more about your motivation in life. What gets you up and keeps you going every day?
Yeah, I think what gets me up every day is I was in addiction myself for 40 years with obsessive compulsive food disorder and bulimia. And so I came into recovery using traditional methods like therapy and different things, but also following a spiritual path. And so what gets me up in the morning is this dream I have or goal to help as many people to stop being addicted to suffering. So I have to explain that because people are saying, "What? Addicted to suffering?" In my work and what I discovered in writing my book, Feast and Famine: Healing Addiction with Grace, what we're truly addicted to is suffering. And then we pick a vice or something to make us feel better. So yes, we also have a secondary addiction to those vices, but our true addiction is to the suffering that was created from childhood, teenage, and adult trauma that was never healed. And so, whatever tool I can put out there, whether it's my own podcast, which is called Hungry for Answers, and I have people come on that have either lived the addiction journey as an addict or a caretaker of someone in addiction, and that they have a methodology that they believe works to help people to heal from trauma and suffering. And so every other week, I do it 2 times a month. I just have people come on that maybe the way that they presented is the way that's gonna give someone hope. And so that's why I do the podcast, because I just find all these different ways to heal extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that you said addicted to suffering because that
Mhm.
is such a wild concept. Like, even
Yeah.
when you're in the midst of suffering, you're like, this is not where I want to be. This is not what I want to be feeling. But it's like, no, but you're like addicted to it. Like, you crave suffering, which it's a pretty new concept to me. I'm a pretty young guy. um, I was reading The Big Leap.
Yo, me too. That's one of my favorite books of all time. All time.
Oh my gosh. And Gay Hendricks was like, is it gay or is it Gail?
No gay.
It's Gay Hendricks. Okay, awesome. Gay Hendricks was like, we have like this kind of thermometer of like kind of like happiness or satisfaction in life, and we have a temperature that we can tolerate. And when you're addicted to suffering, that temperature is just at that level of suffering. And when you get above that temperature, you start to do stuff to self-sabotage to put yourself back in
Yes.
the temperature where you're comfortable. And
Yes.
that blew my mind.
Yes. I that book, as little as it was, blew my mind too. For me, what and I do work with this now a lot is when he said that we all basically work in our zone of brilliance. You know, that's when we're really good at what we do, right? And but what we really want to strive for is our zone of genius. And that's when you're really working from your core. You know, what basically you could say it so many different ways, but what your soul came here to do, right? Why you're here in the physical body, you know, as this soul being here is your genius, right? And but in between your zone of brilliance and your zone of genius are upper limit beliefs. And the upper limit beliefs were the ones that really blew me away because our limit beliefs are, to me, the trauma patterns that haven't been healed.
Mhm.
And so mine was the difference between my brilliance and my genius was this fear that if I spoke my truth, I would be humiliated and persecuted.
Mm.
And that comes from probably many lifetimes when that actually did occur.
Yeah,
You know, as a spiritual teacher, one of my teachers said it never ended well for any of us in past lives.
it really
And
never
so I
does.
no, and so it doesn't. So I came into this lifetime afraid of that. And so I lived a pattern of humiliation for my entire life. And what got me out of that in writing Feast and Famine was something I read. You know, when you read something and it becomes like this life altering thing, and it may not even, maybe just a paragraph, but in the paragraph it said that no one can judge you unless you give them the title of judge.
Mm.
Otherwise, they're just expressing their opinion, and you have a right to say, screw you or thank you, right?
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want to them, but you decide whether they're judging you or not. And to me, that was the shift. That was the shift that made all of my fears in my upper limit beliefs move out of the way. And then I could really express myself and not be afraid.
I love that. I
Mm.
love that. Why do you think we are kind of automatically giving so many people the title of judge?
Because I think it's just, I think it's just the human experience, because there's always someone. I mean, I think it starts with our parents, right? They're our parents. Of course, they know better. Our teachers, yes, they know better. They probably know me better than I know myself. In our relationships, someone saying this is not good enough. Or at work, we have bosses, right? So we always have these people who are in a position to tell us what we're not doing right and to contribute to the trauma that's part of the suffering. So I think as we're healing the trauma patterns and healing trauma in our lives, it's the first time, it begins to become the first time where you can have conversations with people and just listen to them. Here's another good small little book that you might like, Timothy. It's called TED, The Empowerment Dynamic. That's what it stands for. And what I took from that book is that when you're in a good place and someone gives you, tells you some things about you that they want you to change, it's constructive, feels constructive. But when you're not in a good place and someone tells you things that they want you to change, it feels like criticism. So it all depends on where you are in your life. How empowered do you feel? And I think not allowing anyone to judge you makes you extraordinarily empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
Mm,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, let's actually I want to jump into, before we jump into your dreams and goals, I want to talk about, so we don't give other people the title of judge. Like, we can get to that point. But what happens when, everywhere you go, there you are, and you're always judging yourself? Like, what
Oh,
would you say
yeah.
to that person?
Yeah. Which we do. Again, this is about really clearing out the trauma, right? Because um, pain is inevitable.
Mm.
It's like death and taxes. You're, you're not going to get out of this life without pain,
Yep.
but suffering is an option.
Mm.
And it's so people can say, your listeners, of course, but how many times have you heard someone say, oh, she's in so much pain and suffering? It's kind of like we lump them together, but it's really not true. Pain is inevitable, suffering is an option. So I'm sure you've seen some people that are in a lot of pain, but they're not suffering. They're just like, well, I'm going to focus on feeling better. I'm going to look forward to running again. Whatever it is, right? They're not suffering. But for the person who's suffering, surrender is required. And what does surrender mean? Surrender means when you really give it up. Surrender is not wishful thinking, right? It's like, I wish this would go away. Surrender is when you're like, I will never do that again. Or even if you give it up to your higher power, I'm done. Take this. So how do you know you're actually in surrender? For me, when I know I'm in surrender from suffering, whatever I was suffering over, it seems like instantaneously or within 24 hours, depends on what it is, I always get the answer to why I was suffering in the first place. It seems like I get that Clare, like that shower moment that says, oh my gosh, that's what was going on. Right. Then the last part is, so we have pain is inevitable, suffering is an option, surrender is required, and then grace must be allowed. So what is grace? Grace is anything that comes to us to help us. Now, it could be within ourselves, it could be a knowing or something we forgot about, or it could be a miracle, like all of a sudden you need help and someone calls you and says, hey, I thought of you. I think you might want to meet this person, right? It's really kind of crazy how those synchronistic events happen. So I always say synchronicity is coincidences inspired by spirit.
I like
right. And so grace, grace is listening. Grace, is listening and saying, oh, wow, he is really serious about this. What can we do to help? But did you hear me say this? Grace must be allowed. And this gets to what you were saying, Timothy, because sometimes we like being the one that's suffering. Sometimes we don't like it, but that's what our family expects of us. Like, oh gosh, that, so and so, they're, I don't know if families call each other losers, but maybe that's what they expect from that person, right? They're never going to get ahead, right? And so we take on these labels from our family and from our friends, from our teachers, from work, from society. And then we think, well, grace isn't coming to me. Or even if it came to me, I wouldn't even recognize it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why grace must be allowed. And these teachings, these 4 teachings are part of my book, Feast and Famine. Yeah.
Sounds like a great book.
I love it. I love it. I have to say this. The first time I wrote it, I was actually in addiction, but I wrote it anyway because I was guided to write it, excuse me. And when I got to the end, I was like, well, these teachings didn't work for me. So, I can't release it until I actually came into recovery, and then I rewrote it. And so there are certain points in the book where I really rewrote it. And then there were other times I kept how I wrote it in addiction and then compared it to how I would write it in recovery. And what a difference.
Yeah.
Especially on the surrender part. I didn't have any idea what surrender meant because I wasn't in surrender. So, but when I went to write it, I'm like, I'm going to keep that first part. I want someone to understand what surrender is not.
Yeah.
Right. And then I wrote what surrender actually is. And it was a lot. It was a lot to put myself out there. It surprised a lot of people that I could have this addiction for so long and be successful at the same time. In business and as a mother, as a wife, daughter, all of that, friends. But addiction, we can do that. We can be addicted and be successful, but we're never happy. And for me as a spiritual teacher, I almost felt like a fraud.
Yeah.
Because really, who am I to tell anybody else what to do? Is what I would be thinking in the back of my head. And where's the next Hershey bar, right? Sorry, product placement. But that's what I would be thinking, like, oh my God, let's get out of here. Let's get ice cream, right? Like, yeah. I'd be like, stop. But so now I live in a whole different place with food. It's so peaceful and enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have to email Hershey to get payment for that.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Let's jump into your dreams and goals now. What is your vision for your company and your life?
Yeah. So I've talked a lot about the dream for my business, which is to really find whatever tool I can to keep driving home that we have to surrender the suffering. Even one of the things I'm working on this year is an anthology. So an anthology is a book that's written by 20 different authors. Everybody takes a chapter. And then it's like we builds a community, and you become an author even by just writing one chapter. So I love it. I love the model. And so the book will be Surrender Your Story. Because I believe that we carry these trauma stories around with us. And this came to me at a meditation twice at New Year's. Every New Year's, I ask my own inner divinity to tell me something new for the new year. And twice I heard surrender your story. And I was like, which one? I got lots of stories, right? We all have lots of stories. And they're like, all of them. And so I started thinking, what does that mean? And and to me, it means we have the way we see ourselves, right? We've talked about that. Those upper limit beliefs. We just have stories about ourselves. We have stories about our relationship with our parents, right? We have stories about, who we are in the world in our business, or who do we work for. And I believe that we have to surrender those stories so that we can allow the grace, the love, the joy, the peace, the abundance to flow in, because we're not blocking it by our own self-limiting beliefs about ourselves. Because even in the teachings of Abraham, I don't know if you're familiar with that, Esther and Jerry Hicks, we have a vortex of energy around us. And every time we have something that we really desire, it starts coming towards us and into the vortex until we're ready to receive it, right? And Esther would always say, Esther channeling Abraham, that the only uncooperative component of your vortex that ever exists is yourself, right? Because you put out your dreams and your desires, and then you're like, what is taking so long?
Yep.
Right? Wait, do I really deserve that? I don't know. Maybe I'm not good enough for that. Like, we start doing all of that stuff. And so I'm not sure where I was going, but we can end it there.
Awesome. Well, that's that. I love that. And I think it honestly, I don't like, amazing is the wrong word, but it's what I'm going to use. Like, it's amazing how we hold ourselves back from what we want. And we're the only things
Yes.
holding ourselves back from what we want. It just blows my mind, because I'm like, we want it. Like, we know we want it, but we hold ourselves back. And it's the most, like, I don't know, just conflicting thought. It's so hard to wrap your head around.
Well, and it's interesting. I was thinking about something that you wrote in your notes to me as a guest, and something that I could share with people that would help them to manifest what they want in their lives. And something that I learned this year that I'm really focusing on is making sure that it matters to me. Does it really matter to you what you think your dream is? Or is it somebody else's dream and you're just going along for the ride? Because if it doesn't really matter to you, you may energetically block it from happening. So I think it's important to understand if it does matter to you. And you may say, it doesn't matter to me, but it matters to my partner. So I'm all in. But you want to make sure that you understand why it matters to you. And hold that, because what matters to you, you will create into matter. And what doesn't matter to you, you will also create into matter, right? So watch what matters to you, because either way, you're going to have to manage it.
Alrighty. So I often name the podcast based on quotes that I loved in the podcast. Right now, it was Synchronicity is Coincidence Inspired by Spirit, because I really love that
Yes.
one. And that was going to be with Rob and Claire. should it be I forgot how you just put it, but it was like what matters to you, you create into matter.
Well, don't use that one just yet. That's part of my next book.
Okay.
It's okay for the listeners to do that. But what you could say is maybe just make sure it really matters to you.
Yeah.
Because if you don't make sure what make sure what you want to manifest matters to you. Because if it doesn't matter to you, you won't manifest it.
Yeah.
You'll manifest some version of it that you don't want.
And you'll be unhappy.
And you'll be unhappy, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's quite interesting.
It is.
It's quite interesting. I wanted to preparing to be on your show, and you said, what's your favorite book? I was having such a good time. I was like going through my bookcase. Ooh, love that one. Love that one. Love that one. Love that one. And it was really hard for me to pick a favorite book. So I picked two. And I thought maybe I would share them with you.
Go for it.
Okay. This first book is called The Choice by Dr. Edith Eva Eger. And she was on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday. And Oprah, I happened to turn it on, and Oprah said, I'd like to introduce you to the author of The Choice, Dr. Edith Eva Eger. And Dr. Eger said, hello. And I was like, wow, I didn't even listen. She had me at a hello. I said, I'm going to get that book. I love this book. And then after I finished the book, I listened to the Oprah podcast.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't listen to it before. I had to read the book. So what is The Choice about? The Choice is about a young woman. She's 16, Edith. It's an autobiography. And she's a trained ballet dancer and gymnast, and she's sent to Auschwitz. And when she gets there, her mom says to her, they can take anything from you except your mind. And that was the last thing her mom said to her, because they took her mom right off the train and sent her to the ovens. But Edith did not. And the way she figured out how to manage her mind was she kept envisioning how beautiful her life would be after the Holocaust. And she kept envisioning that. And then she came out, she survived. They found her in a pile of bodies, but she was alive. And she healed. And she became a world-renowned psychologist helping people heal from trauma. And then she wrote her book, The Choice. And it was so powerful. And just listen, and she has a lot of examples with her client examples of how she helped people. And then my other book from this year is Sue Monk Kidd, The Book of Longings. And this book is about Jesus's wife. And everyone's like, what? Jesus had a wife? Right? But that's what the book is about. If he had a wife, what kind of badass person would she be, right? Like to be married to him, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really a book about her. Anna is her name, and who she was, and then her marriage to him. But it really was about her. And this was one of those books that I was in the airport. And I always go into the store because I'd like to envision my books in the bookshelves there in the airport.
Yeah.
Not there yet, but I like to envision them. And then I immediately saw this, The Book of Longings. And I'm like, ooh, what's that? Because I like her. She wrote The Secret Life of Bees. She's a really wonderful author. And then I read the back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to read this book. And I couldn't put it down. It's really, really well written. And even though we don't know if Jesus was married. What do we know, right? It doesn't, it's better to portray him as a single man who gave up everything for everybody else, right? But it's a lot of historical information in here that feels right. That if he was married, this is who she would be and what happened. So those are my two favorite. I'm hedging that, but that's what came to me because I just love all the books I read. It has to be a really bad book for me not to like it.
Yeah, I got you. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing those. Those sound like amazing books.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that leads us into our thriving three. Is there anything else dreams and goals wise you want to talk about before we move on?
Yeah. Well, I would like to. My personal goal is to retire closer to the beach so that I can be out there at sunrise every day, whether the sun is coming up or not. Because what I've discovered is when I'm away and I'm in Florida or something, it's really crazy what's going on in the horizon, even if the sun isn't coming up. Like if you have a chance to, any of you listeners have a chance to go to the sunrise and it's not sunny, go anyway. Like the cloud formations at the horizon are just incredible. So I just want to be closer because I don't know. I feel so connected to the ocean and the beach and the air and the birds, that I always wonder if there's a species of humans called mer people, and they're like people that lived in the ocean. I'm like, I must have done that in one lifetime.
Yeah.
Must have lived in there because I can't stay away. And so I want to live closer in good health and with abundant resources.
There we
That's
go.
my dream, my personal dream.
I love it. So we got find whatever tool you can to keep driving home your point of surrendering to suffering. Writing it in an anthology, is that this year?
That will happen this year. I have actually 3 books happening this year, I think. I want to write a book about my experience of writing, of really writing about my healing journey. And my motto is, if you write your recovery life story, you heal yourself. And if you share it, you heal others. So I want to write a book that encourages people to write their recovery life story.
Gotcha. There we go. And retiring closer to the beach.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, if there are 1 or 2 people that you can meet right now and they would help you take the next step towards any of these goals, it could be a specific person or a type of person, who would they be and how would they help you?
I would love to connect to recovery center directors, because I would really like to share the message of feast and famine to as many people in recovery as I can, because I think people newly in recovery are so still focused on healing, not going back to their addictive nature, that they're not necessarily moving forward to what I think is required for long-term recovery, which is a mind, body, spirit, and emotional perspective on life, all working at the same time, whatever that takes. And so I would love to meet as many recovery center directors, and national programs, so that I could get this message out. So that's that on my okay. And then on the personal one, I would love to open up Zillow or something and find the perfect seller of that perfect beach house.
There we go.
Right? Because that's like a timing thing, right? Because there are so little houses for sale anywhere.
Yeah.
because of people working from home, that it's really hard to find a house to buy.
What does that perfect beach house look like? How much does it cost? Where is it?
Yeah, so right now we're thinking on the Connecticut shoreline, anywhere between Brantford and Mystic. And I think we want to um, have a reasonable we can afford a reasonable mortgage, but we don't want to make that a financial struggle. And a ranch would be great, so that eventually when we don't want to climb stairs, we won't have to.
Yeah.
Thinking ahead, right? I'd like to have a fence for my dog. So in the middle of the winter, we can just let her outside and we stand at the door. And yeah, just maybe 3 bedrooms so that my kids can visit. Um, yeah, and a nice neighborhood of very nice people.
There we go.
That's what we have. That's what we have now. So that's what it's hard. We have great neighbors. So from
Yeah.
time, when you're thinking about this, like, oh, do I want to give up good neighbors? But so thank you for allowing me to dream that through. So, because all those things matter to me, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So now I can materialize that perfect beach house.
Yeah. If the house showed up tomorrow, would you buy it tomorrow?
Mhm.
Gotcha.
I would, and then sell the house we're in. Because what happens is if you sell your house, there may not be a house to buy,
Yeah.
and there may not be an apartment that takes dogs. So we're thinking that we sell the house first and then sell the house we're in second, which is so little nerve-wracking and maybe flies in the face of good real estate planning. But I think that's what's required in this new real estate COVID age.
Yeah. Yeah, for
When
sure. I
there's
mean, it is
no
totally like,
properties.
yeah. Yeah. Totally a comfort thing. Like, don't stress yourself out in the home buying process, right? That's not going
Right.
to make it pleasant for anybody. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mhm.
What is one way you like to take care of yourself?
I have lots of ways that I like to take care of myself. I eat organic. Um, I I exercise. This year I bought a rebounder, which is an indoor trampoline. So it's maybe 3 feet wide and 3 feet in all directions. So that's fun. Now I'm really jumping high on it, and it's
Yeah.
supposed to be good for the lymphatic system, like it drains everything, and
Mhm.
so it's supposed to be very good for you. And I read, obviously. Um, and I and I love what I do. I love my work. So I think that makes a big difference in um, my state of mind.
There we go. There we go.
Mhm.
And what is one action step that you can take right now to meet
Mhm.
more recovery center directors or national recovery programs and get your message out there?
Yes, so I have I am in the middle of a big step. I have an actual virtual assistant in Brazil.
Mm.
She's lovely and so smart. And so what she did is she created an email list for me of recovery centers and their directors and their email and their phone number. And I just created an email introduction of myself and what I would like to come do. And now she's going to mail that to all of the recovery directors.
Email marketing. There you go. That is a
Yeah.
huge step.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I figured, let them read about it and see if they want to come, because the course that I want to teach there is called the Right Recovery, and I actually have a journal called the Right Recovery, and it takes you through recovery using writing, which that's how I grounded my recovery, is through writing. So that's my journal. And then I think now it's funny, you usually write the book and then you write the journal. But I think I wrote the journal first and the course, and now I'm writing the book.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it got out of order, but I'm just going with the flow.
There we go. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got one last question for you.
Yeah.
So you know how there are people on the planet who have a really fixed mindset, not willing to accept help, not willing to accept change. Sometimes they'll live their whole life like that. Sometimes they'll die like that, unfortunately. Other times they'll make that switch to more of a growth mindset, willing to accept
Mm-hmm.
help and willing to accept change. In your opinion, what is the catalyst that causes that change?
Yeah. I'm thinking it's something I just said. Learning to go with the flow. Because the flow is the flow is you in alignment with universal energy. And if we think of the universe, it's abundant and unlimited. And so when you can go with the flow, so here's a good example from my life. I'll be working on something. Let's say I put out a course, example, and no one shows up. I could totally beat myself up, or I could say, must have been the wrong timing. Or maybe I need to shift it because I'm marketing it to the wrong audience. So instead of beating myself up, I look at it as, I thought this was the right opportunity, but obviously something else is coming. Not something was taken away from me. So that place, that's true surrender, right? If we go back to surrender, that nothing is happening to you, right? You are you have to do some tweaking, right? Because you could have that mindset that is undermining yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you're busy judging yourself. So what I've had to learn to do is, that was the biggest person that I had to get to stop judging me was myself. And so now when something happens, I come into my body, I get really grounded in my body, and I say, okay, that didn't work. Let's figure out why, and then let's move on, instead of beating myself up. So I would say, stop beating yourself up. Know that when one opportunity goes away, another one is coming. It's always coming. We're always in motion, right? We're going in the flow. It's like going down a river, and I'm just going to tell one quick story. This is funny.
Go for it.
My son and I were in Israel, and we went on this tourist ride down the Jordan River, right? And you were put in like a raft with 6 other people from all over the world. And then you had all these rafts going at the same time from all over the world, right? And the Jordan River is like really small. It's like the width of a house. It's not a big river, right? And at the beginning, everyone was screaming at each other in their own boats, and screaming at each other if your boat bumped into somebody, and all these different languages from all over the world. It was really quite, to watch it, it was really quite interesting. Then all of a sudden, somewhere down the middle of the Jordan River, everybody picked up their oars because they gave up. And now everybody's floating down the river, right? Going with the flow, getting in a much better place. By the time we were done, so then we get to 3/4 of the river, and like if you got stuck on a side, the person in the next boat would be, let us tow you out. Have a nice day, like everybody.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when you got to the end of the ride, everyone's like, enjoy your trip. Like they're yelling to each other from this fiasco of when we got into the river, and everybody had to be not only in control of their own boat, but in control of the river and in control of their own destiny. And so that to me was a perfect example of when you lift your oars, right? And you just go with the flow, how peace comes into your life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Mm,
That's a really good. I'm glad you told that story.
thank you.
Awesome.
It was
Well,
fun. It was fun.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Robin, is there anything else that you want to chat about before we sign off?
Um, no, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. If people would like to learn more about me, they can go to clarity.com, CLARE. That's my last name, -ity.com, Robin Clare, Robin Clarity. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook too, Clarity by Robin. And yeah, yeah. I also have a free 30-minute conversation that people can sign up for. I don't really know what happens when they call me. I mean, I know what happens when they call me. I don't know why people are calling me. I don't like say, call me because you want to do this, but call me, if you need any kind of guidance. And usually if you call, it's because you were meant to, right? And then I can help you. So that you can find that on my website.
There we go. Awesome.
Mhm.
I actually did have one thing I wanted to say. You said
Yeah.
alignment with universal energy. And so I made this kind of personal podcast. I'm doing the personal brand too. I do a lot of interviews on this show, but I like
Mhm.
to talk to my audience too. And
Mhm.
one of the things I was talking about was in The Law of Success by
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill. He kind
Yes.
of talks about that universal energy and how
Yes.
um, like all energy in the universe is like the same. We're made of the same stuff that the universe is made of. And
Absolutely.
what gets me is that one, it's true. Like when I was always skeptical of like law of attraction and like it just seemed kind of woo woo is like the term people put around it. But I'm like, it's just facts. Like you just can't deny it. But what I really wanted to say was when you were talking about the universe being in such abundance, it is literally expanding into itself.
Mhm.
Like if that's not abundance, I don't know what is. I think it's
Yeah.
the most awesome thing ever.
And we have this opportunity to recognize really the truth of who we are, which are energetic beings having a human being experience. So I could get super spiritual on that, but know your energy too, right?
Yeah.
You're much more energy. Your energetic field is much bigger than your body. And it's connected. Well, not connected. It's a part of the whole universal energy, which makes you a part of and all of universal energy. So think of it as the ocean. Universal energy is the ocean, and your body is a dropper, like a little medicine dropper,
Mhm.
and you put that little medicine dropper in the ocean and you fill it with all being, right? Universal energy. So the question becomes, are you that dropper filled with universal energy, or are you just universal energy? And the answer is yes, right? You're both. You're
Yeah.
both. So the more that you know that you are universal energy, then you have all of those resources available to you to manifest the best life that you possibly can. And then you just have to learn the tools for yourself that allow you to ground what you want to do in your life with inside yourself.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of that starts with knowing what matters to you, right? Because I don't know, a lot of times we're doing things because it sounds good, or I'm supposed to do this next, or this is the right, but you got to really know that. And then once you know that, because when you think about what matters to you, Tim, it's almost like you're like, that really matters to me. It's like it's like a physical thing, right?
Yeah.
right? When you said that really matters to me, and it's like becomes part of who you are, right? Yeah. So this is what the fifth book I'm writing with my dear colleague Colleen Morgan. This is what it's going to be about. So I'll make sure you get a copy of that book.
There we go. Thank you. I
Yeah,
love that.
because you'll find it very interesting.
Awesome.
Mm.
Awesome. Well, Robin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome, Tim. It was really awesome. I enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And if you guys are listening to this and you loved what Robin had to say, make sure to check her out on social media and her website. All of the links will be in the show notes. Also, buy her books and give them to people because
Yes.
it's an amazing message that we need to spread. As we always ask, send this podcast to 1 to 3 people you know need to hear this message. Shoot us a 5-star review on iTunes, and we're out.
Great.